Um, so thank y'all for joining. Welcome to our July meeting for the North Texas Tableau User Group. We hope y'all are staying safe, staying healthy, still working from home, because we all enjoy that. For those of you that haven't been to one of our previous events, a little bit about us. We meet monthly, Plano, Texas area. We're going on 4 years for this user group. We try to keep our subjects Tableau focused, but we do talk about some general data topics from time to time. Like I said, we do meet monthly in Plano when the opportunity presents itself, when we kind of get out from under COVID here. I think in the past 2.5, 3 years, we've only missed 2 months. So that kind of speaks to, how dedicated we are to put these events together for y'all. Join us on LinkedIn, on Twitter to kind of get our updates, stay kind of up to date with new meetings, new invites as we send them out. Our team there along the bottom, myself, Tim Katie, Joey Ramos, and Brandy Locker are on the call today. Steven's on a little bit of a hiatus, but we'll welcome him back when he is ready. So for those of you that have been to any of our previous events, you'll know that we've kind of focused this year's topics around the life cycle of, a dashboard project or a Tableau project. So we've spent a couple months on data literacy. We spent some time on data engineering this month and last month, of course, talking about, desktop functionality. And we're going to wrap up the rest of the year with kind of form, design, and ultimately delivery and soft skills of your project or your dashboard. We are still kind of planning a holiday party. Hopefully we can all get together and be in person by then, so fingers crossed. But today we have an amazing agenda, which I'll get to in just a moment. But before we do that, I do want to kind of point you to our quick survey. Brandy, if you wouldn't mind sharing that in the chat. We're just looking to get an idea of when folks are feeling comfortable getting back in person, how often y'all would like to meet, kind of what we're after for an agenda, that sort of thing. So if y'all wouldn't mind checking out the chat, filling that survey out, just a few questions, I think 4 or 5, Brandy, keep me honest. Oh, 7.
It's just a few, it takes less than a minute.
Yeah, so if y'all wouldn't mind filling that survey out for us, it'll give us a good idea of kind of how we're going to manage the upcoming meetings in August, September, and going forward. So, like I mentioned, amazing agenda today. We got some really good content, some amazing speakers. First up is going to be Will Perkins. Those of you that have been around our group for a while will recognize him. He's going to share some content around his, I don't know, your favorite calculation, Will, date diff?
It's in the top 5.
Excellent. So he's going to share some cool stuff with us around date diff and how he leverages that kind of his day to day. Then Tableau Zen Master Lindsay Betzendahl has an amazing presentation. I've only caught about half of it, so I'm really excited to see the rest of it today. She has a really amazing presentation for some of her top tips of turning up the heat on your business dashboards. So without further ado, I know you guys are probably sick of hearing from me, Joey, and Brandy, so I'm going to turn it over to our guest today. And the first up is Will. So Will, oh, sorry. Did we have a late joiner?
Oh, right. Hey guys. Hey, Tim.
Oh, hey. Thanks for joining, Zach. Perfect timing. So
yeah.
Well, our first guest today, Zach, is Will. So you know Will pretty well. Do you want to take a minute to kind of help us get to know Will?
Yeah, sure. So, well, first up, thanks, Tim. First time being here for the Texas Tug. I heard y'all 7 times so far. So
oh
if anybody wants to make a drinking game out of the Texas Tug, I think that you guys know what to do, right?
And you know what? I'm a transplant too, so it's not a natural word in my lexicon. So it is shocking to hear that I've said it that much.
Yeah, well, I'm sure Will beat it. So Tim reached out. He asked me if I wanted to introduce Will, and my first question was who? But no, I know Will here. Yeah, for sure. So, I was actually a little surprised that we were able to get an audience for Will, but then I seen that Lindsay was also joining. So thanks, Lindsay. I think you pulled Will out of quicksand there. Uh, Will and I'm joking, have known each other for a long time. I've had the pleasure of being Will's boss for just a few years now, and I've witnessed his journey from about the 67th best Tableau developer at Chase to the 62nd. He's put a lot of work into it, and he's doing a really good job. So, all kidding aside, I have to be nice. Will does know his stuff. I think you guys are in for a good presentation. I will say though that Will's about to take like 8 months off, Will. So he's probably going to forget everything about Tableau. 5 months, 5, 8 months, something like that. So I think he's probably going to forget all of this by then. So he can come back to his own recording. But Will, go ahead and take it away, my friend. Thanks, Tim, for letting me introduce my buddy here.
Absolutely. Thank you, Zach.
Wow. So I do have I am Will Perkins. I do have a disclaimer here. I am talking about this. So my introduction disclaimer is, don't believe anything Zach just said. He didn't know that I saw that he was going to be introducing me today, but do believe him if he complimented me, because does this look like a person you can trust? Quick Google search for images of Zach Geis. Now, to Tim's point, I really do enjoy date diff from a calculation perspective. It is truly a powerful, versatile use of calculations, and we will go through kind of different use cases. A lot of what I like to build and teach on is how to scale business style dashboards. And so date functionality is definitely a big thing in dashboards for businesses. So I do want to go over some quick date functions, quick key date functions that I generally leverage. Date diff being, this is pretty much in the order in which I use them. So date diff being the number one. So date diff is looking at the difference between a start and an end date, right? And you define it at the level of granularity. You want to find the mathematical numerical value between that. So you're going to get a numerical difference. It's a integer value. So if you're looking at the date difference between today and the beginning of the year, a month level, you're going to have 7 months is the difference between 7 months. So date truncation, I really like that because it takes the value of the date to its lowest common denominator by the, so if your date is July 27th, like it is today, and you say I want a date trunk to the month level, it brings all dates down to July 1st. So go down to the week level, it goes down to the beginning of said week, the year, the quarter, etc. Date add, I like to, look at the difference between, or add date values or add values to dates, etc. Look at a date name, because dates can, when you think about dates, and I'll get to this here in a little bit, it can be categorical, it can be continuous. So looking at the different pieces of what a date is, date name pulls out the categorical value of that date. So July is the month name of today's date. Date part, it can define the numeric value. So July is the 7th month. That's the date part. And then parsing can say I've got a string that Tableau doesn't really recognize as a date because this is the way the system sends it to me. I don't have an ETL process, and I need to convert this to a date to do some values, or I have a multitude of fields. There's a month field, a day field, a year field, and I need to join those together in particular ways. So those are the quick definitions, and I know Tableau has like the official definitions in the calculation pane. So while we're going through this, I do want to make sure you take some mental notes. So as we think about this, the you want to think about how to scale the dashboards. You want to think about, if my data changes, what is this going to do? If I'm focused on a particular metric or whatever, how do those values change or move over time? So thinking about scalability is always front of mind, or should be front of mind when thinking about business dashboards. So reporting timeframes at granularity lower than month gets very confusing for end users. So if you're thinking about date diff on a week level, or you're reporting week over week changes or month over month change, or day over day, those types of granularities, it gets very hard to communicate that to the business users, right? Because if I'm looking at a week over week comparison from last year at this week to this year at this week, am I looking at the actual 7 days that are in this current week to the same 7 days from last year? Am I looking at week number 42? Those types of things get really kind of nuanced and hard to understand. But when you look at months, quarters, years, there's only so many, there's 12 months in a year, there's 4 quarters in a year, there's 1 year in a year, right? So those are pretty easy for people to understand. And I mentioned earlier, dates can be both categorical and continuous in Tableau. You can look at the categorical value, the actual, this is July, and I care about July all the time. Like July is just the value. Or I think about it in terms of human, like thinking about a calendar. We know it's a linear path. We know that there was a past, we know there's future, and looking from a continuous aspect. Sometimes by default, when you're using dates in Tableau, it kicks it into the categorical value. So if you didn't have a good case for date diff before, hopefully you'll have them now when you think about this. So I do want to start getting into the actual kind of meat and potatoes of my presentation. So we're all very familiar. I'm using Superstore data today. I have created a constant date calculation just to ensure that we've got some future date values, and I really like to do this just to keep my my data dynamic. So I'll just kind of zoom in here. So I'm basically adding a couple years to the data, so I can show you the difference between future and past dates, because sales only go to 2020 in the default data. So you'll notice it's a little bit different than before. But so what we're looking at right now is, let's say our business has projected data. We've got a decision science team that can project out, what are we thinking go forward? What are the sales going to look like, for the rest of this year and into next year? We already know what it was in the past. So we're looking at a very simple line chart. We throw the continuous value of the dates. We throw the continuous value at the month level. We throw sum of sales. And I just put a reference line here so you guys can see, this is where we're currently at, and everything forward here is projected values, right? Very easy, because I don't have to think about this this month, right? It's just showing up what the data is. Now, there's no filtering, there's nothing in here. So if we want to say, well, the business, we only really care about like prior 13-month reporting. It's a very simple thing to do. I don't care about future values. I don't care about anything else. Our data only goes up until today. So I just want to have a 13-month view. I want to look at year-over-year numbers. How have things changed? Again, that's super easy to do with a standard date filter. I can just drag, I'll take this out here. I'll do this with you. I'm going to drag here. We're going to go to relative date, and we want the months, the last 13 months. And Tableau says, hey, just to let you know, you're going to be showing 7/1 of 2020 to 7/31 of 2021. That's good, because in theory, I don't have future date value. So I get this continuous trend, super easy again, but it is fixed at a default time frame. There's not a lot of dynamic aspect here. I'm not going to be able to say I want future values if I have future values. So how do I make that type of value dynamic, where I can say I want some leading months. I still have a lot more future information in here, but I just want the next 3 months and the prior 13 months in data. So you can't do that with a dynamic filter. I can come in here and I can say, well, I want a range of dates, and I can say, well, here's my 3 months in the future. Just go here, and my 13 months in the past, July, right, or whatever. It's good enough. So I'm able to show, but then I have a slider, and then it's based on, and the slider's not really going to be dynamic, and I'm not a big fan of sliders. I like something that's going to be a little bit more dynamic and set it and forget it. So before we go into how to solve for this, let's understand what date diff truly is. So date diff, the way that I use it and the reason why I like it is because it gives me an anchor point. So when I think about date diff, if I'm looking at today's value, and I'm doing a date diff between today and something else, 0 will always be my current value. So if I'm looking at a date diff of years on all of this data, my 0 is my current year data, right? So if I'm looking at a trend line, I've got 4 values. 0 is where I'm currently at. If I'm looking at quarters, 0 is my current quarter, right? Months, same thing, right? So 0 is going to be my anchor point. And then I can think anything negative is in the past and anything positive is in the future. And so it really helps if I start, just adjusting this date availability, because sometimes data is not available as of, today. You have like lagging data. And so the hard part is you don't always know by default. It's hard to define that scale, like past 13 months in Tableau using the date filter doesn't know based on your oldest date. It's just looking at a time frame. So how do we solve for this? I want to show a trailing 13 dates, trailing 13 months, and a projection of 3 months in the future. So let's do this. I'm already at the month value. So let's look at what the date diff month calculation is. So I've got a parameter in here, which is based on data availability, which I just updated that parameter. So I'm going to say that is my report date. A lot of times in business dashboards, people put in, or in data sources, people will put in, data as of, or this is the report month, or this is the report date. So we could use that as a variable. So in this aspect, I'm just using it as a parameter. So I'm doing the date difference between month, the constant date, which is my updated order date, and data availability. Super, super easy calculation. Now I'm going to drag this over here to my filters, and I want to look at all values. And because I already have the definition of what I know I need, I can say I want -12, because that is today to last year. So it's going to give me my year-over-year view, my 13-month view, because 0 is current month, and I want 3 months in the future. And I hit apply, and I never have to think about this dashboard ever again, or I say this worksheet, as long as these values remain the same. They want a trailing 13 months and they want the 3 months in the future. If they come back and say, hey, we want all values in the future, but we only want the trailing 13 months, then I can edit this filter and I can say at least -12. Again, I never have to think about this again. So it makes it a lot easier when you think about numbers versus actual dates. So I just went through this. The reason why I really like date diff is primarily when it comes to KPIs. I love set it and forget it KPIs. So a lot of times on KPIs, you have what is the current sum of sales or value, and they like context. Generally, it's month over month and year over year is what people conceptually just say, oh yeah, that's what I want in KPI. I want that context. So I can make set it and forget it, pretty sweet KPIs that I never have to change. And I always have this, and it's very simple. just using a couple table calculations, this makes it super easy. So how do we get to that point? Well, I've got my month of constant date. So I'm looking at the discrete value. I've got my regions here, and I've got all time. Well, for my KPI, I care about my current value, right? So I care about my current month, my sales in my current month. I'm going to need to know what my prior month is. I'm going to need to know what my beginning of the year or my last year value is going to be. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to say, well, let's filter down to just those values. I want -12 to 0. And just for validation, we'll show the date available, show parameter control. So 531 is truncated down, right? We're at the truncated month of the constant date. So this is going to looking at year over year, so May to May. All right, good. So looking at this information, I want to do a sum of sales. I want to do a table calculation to get my month over month value. I'm going to drag sum of sales over here to detail because I can't drag it on top of label. It'll just go away because I'm already showing it. So I'm going to drag sum of sales to label real quick, or detail. And I'm going to right click. I'm going to turn this into a table calculation and do % difference. I'm going to drag this over to label real quick to show. So I've got these percentages, and I want to make sure that this calculation is working as expected. So I'm going to edit the calculation. I'm going to say I want this based off of the region. So for each region, I want the difference of month of date, right? So now I see 13. So this is 57%. So that is about, that looks correct. So 11,000, almost 12,000 is almost 50% or almost 60% more than the 7,500. So this calculation looks good. All right, I'm going to close this out. And then I'm going to do, well, I'll just drag this over here and we'll just call this, call this month over month example. All right, so we got quick calculation here. Now you're not seeing anything over here, but that's because there's like a big number. We'll format this in a little bit. It'll be perfectly fine. I'm going to do the same thing to get my year over year calculation. Drag this to detail, quick calculation, % difference, drag to label, validate, edit calculation. We're going to go specific dimensions for each, and we're actually going to do relative to the first. So now we're telling it to go all the way to the very beginning, the first number, and compare these values. All right. Again, I'm going to drag this over here. And then calculation 2, we're going to call this year over year example. Now I'm going to format this real quick. Those are really big, so let me just make these 2 right here. Bring it down to, let's just say size 12. And then so month over month, month over month. Make this over here, YOY. Let's see what that looks like. So looking at this, west, all the way down here, west, 12,043, 10,069, 4. All right, so that looks correct. All of these look correct. And now I really don't care about the other months. So what I like to do, I'll do a quick table calculation here, just a quick inline calculation. And I'll say date diff of the month. Oops. Date diff of month equals 0. So I'm going to get a Boolean value. Okay. Date diff month equals 0. I don't know why it's going over here. I'll just bring this right here. So for it is false for all of these elements, except for true, right? Actually, I'll drag this here. It's not I'm gonna have to apply that calculation again. Fun stuff. So I want to hide where it is not true. Oh, come on. Why is that not going on? Date diff month, date diff month. Make sure my calculation is still good. Bring this in. Calculation, bring this in. There we go. So I brought in that extra granularity. And so now this is an easy calculation that I don't ever have to think about. I don't need this header. I can just unshow that, unshow header. And voila, I've got some fairly simple KPIs again that I don't have to think about ever changing this ever again. I don't have to, like, as long as we care about current value, month over month, year over year, and I've got the data in the database, this will work. Now, a thing that I like to do is enhance data source or enhance KPIs and do a little call out, because, you know, just because you're up more than 0.01% doesn't necessarily mean it's good, but you want to focus on the bad, right? So how can we do this? And I really like to leverage, you know, I really like to leverage reference lines in addition to the dashboard. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to duplicate this. So how can we get this kind of logic into show month over month greater than 75% growth and any loss, just like what we had here. So I'm going to drag over. Come on. Oh, I don't have any references. So my time is almost up. I put a timer because I talk a lot. So we'll get to that. We'll get to that in another thing, because I do have one last thing that I like to show is the year-over-year comparisons using date diff rolling months. So I do examples to show this is where current month is and prior month is, and show the trailing months behind. So going along that path, I start using more along the lines of modulos of rolling the months and rolling years. So instead of using, you know, 0 through 12 or 1 through 12 is the months, you anchor 0 through -11 and -12, etc. So sometimes it does get a little bit complicated. So from rolling months perspective, I take the floor value of the date diff of the month and that the modulo 12. So dividing that by 12 to get it to its lowest point. How many times does 12 go in? I'm not a mathematician, so the exact definition of modulos, I can't give you that, but this works really well to give me a value of 0 through -12 or 0 through -11 for all of my months. And so that gives me a consistent like month value. And I do this for years. Instead of using a modulo, I just do the ceiling, like give me the max value of this division by 12 to give me my year breakout of 0 being current year, -1 being prior year, etc. So what that allows me to do is when I've got my months, I can then say, or my years, I can then do a line chart similar to this, hover over this. This shows me my September of 2020 sales, you know, November to November. I've got a point of reference, which is January, based on, you know, kind of giving the ability to leverage the date diff rolling months as my axes. And I don't have to show the axis, because if I show the header here, my end users aren't going to know what 0 and -11, they're not going to understand what that means. So keeping it on a consistent axis, but putting in the reference points within the tooltips, put it in the title to show current versus prior 12 months, right? Showing this is the time frame that we're in here. We're giving a reference point to say, well, here's your current month value. Here's where January is. So you can kind of understand we're a few months into the year. We get that. if I edit the calculation. So as we get into, you know, future months, let's just say that we've got August or September or whatever, that month continues to go forward. We know that this is trailing months. And so this really gives a good perspective for your stakeholders. So I do want to be cognizant of time. That is the end of where I'm gone for enough time. I could go into date diff for much longer time frame, but I want to be cognizant of our other speakers. So Tim, do we have any Q&A?
Yeah, so we have a couple. I don't know if you want to try to take this one, or maybe you connect with this person offline, but there was a question sort of unrelated to your date diff presentation about showing the top 3 cities, you know, by sales or any particular measure. That might be one we handle kind of off to the side, as it wasn't specifically related to some of the content you were sharing. The next question we had from Craig, any way to set data available or date available parameter to be today's date, so it is also dynamically updated?
Yeah. So let me I'll share my screen again. I was trying to be, there we go. So I'll share. You know, the way that you can have it, because I currently have that as a dynamic value. So I have it based on a calculation of today whenever the workbook opens. So if I close this out, open it back up, it does go to today. This is for my own use case, but like in a business setting, generally, well, I say generally, I don't know everybody's business. So I will say anecdotally, a lot of people that I have worked with put, you know, data as of in there. So I can use, if I need a parameter value, I can use that as a parameter. But let's say that, you know, so I'm using today as a calculated field. It is a singular value. So then I can say for a parameter, dynamic parameter update, to get that singular value to be default to that value as soon as I open it up. That's how you would do it. But let's say that the value is actually prior end of month, no matter what today is, it's the prior month, end of month value. You can get to some, you know, I could do date add day -1 date trunk month date, close this out. I'm gonna do a level of detail just to make sure that my dynamic calculation works. So it says, so it understands I'm going to get that singular value, but then edit here, make sure that it's going to today. So last month, end of month value, you can always keep that there. What else? Anything else?
Let's see. There was another question here. Are you going to share this workbook? Is this available on your public profile?
It is available on my public profile. So if you just go to Tableau public, and actually I can put in my link. I'll put the link into the chat. But yes, it is on my public profile.
Okay. And there was one other question regarding forecasts, but we'll connect offline here to try to help out answering those. So thank you, Will. You know, I just started working with Will in December, and he took me through kind of his thought process in leveraging date diff, and he turned me into a believer. The way he leverages it is there's a ton of value in it. So I hope you guys found value in that presentation. I would encourage you to check out that workbook when you get a chance. So with that, let me share my screen real quick. I want to introduce our next speaker. So Lindsay Betzendahl has one of my personal favorite Tableau public profiles and blogs out there, kind of in the Tableau community. I've shared them there on the screen. She's a Tableau Zen master and a consultant with Health Data Viz. So Lindsay, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Hey, Tim.
How are you? Do you want to kind of, I know gave a quick introduction, but for the folks that don't know you, do you want to kind of do a quick intro?
Yeah, for sure. So, so I'm Lindsay Betzendahl. I'm a consultant at Health Data Viz, which is a small consulting company that works specifically with healthcare organizations like Mass General Hospital, Memorial Sloan Kettering Center for Medicaid, Medicare, things like that. Children's Hospital Association. I don't know why I just picked all the hospitals. They're like top of mind for whatever reason. But so I get to work with a lot of really cool clients. I have a long history working in healthcare. I used to be a therapist, marriage and family therapist for years. So I love that work, and I've been doing kind of the data viz stuff for since 2014 is when I got into Tableau. So it's been a very fun ride. So I'm happy to be here and present this. I really like business dashboards. You know, I think we do a lot of things on Tableau Public. You'll see so many amazing things there, but I think there's something to be said about how you can leverage so much of what you see in the public space in your actual work. And so that's what I'm going to talk about today. So hopefully it's useful.
Awesome. Yeah, absolutely. When you're ready, go ahead and
All
take
right.
it away. You can start the screen sharing. Thank you so much again.
Match that screen. And I'll also start by saying, I'm sorry the lighting is terrible. I have a lovely window in my office behind me, but it's not very useful at this hour of the evening. I'm like, how do I make this better? And the other disclaimer I have is I'm going to look at my monitor that's bigger than my little laptop, but it's not that I'm not looking at all of you guys and paying attention to who's watching. It's just I'm going to look over here, which is always really awkward, but you know, it is what it is. All right, cool. So I am going to go as slow as I can, but it's going to be really fast because this is sort of a lightning round of all these top 10 tricks. And I'm really going to show you how to do them, which I recognize can be a little difficult to watch on the fly and catch it all. So this workbook is already available. I've given this presentation before, so it is on my Tableau Public profile, and it has all the directions and details in it if you want to go look there. But we will get started. And yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Betzendahl Data, and that's my website, as Tim pointed out. Okay, so I think I'm going to keep adding things to this list, but this is what I got right now. So these are the 10 things that I'm going to go over today. I do want to say, if you check out the workbook, I've kind of put in little fire icons in different places that'll link you to other resources, whether it be a blog post or someone else's viz that uses this technique, just to give you some other examples. So go down, check that out. All right, so we're going to talk about landing page images and how to use those effectively. Blank character navigation, which if you don't know what it is, you'll find out because I use it in like almost every viz I do. Containers, which I think, as Will said, at least he said it earlier on in our chat before the call, is you got to put everything in containers. I am team container as much as I can. So I'm going to show you how you can really leverage those to kind of build your dashboards. We'll talk about custom formatting with some characters, just quick on the fly formatting, how you can use that. Indicator bars and floating bar charts. Those are two chart types that I use in my dashboards frequently that I think are worth sharing. A sheet swap button, little different than just kind of, well, it's kind of like probably what you think it is, but maybe a little different. How to use header images, some fancy tables if I have enough time. And a return to page, which is a really cool trick that I think has a lot of practical uses. All right, so we're gonna get started. How to add a custom background image. So you'll see here, this is a background image in its entirety. This is actually relatively similar to a real world dashboard that I built. Different colors, but pretty much the same concept. And so you'll even see, let me just show you right here. I use Figma. I actually have, this is my online free version. My company has actual version where I build these things in Figma and then we'll plop them into Tableau. Now, what you'll find is to do this correctly, you have to understand padding because Tableau does some default padding things that are sometimes irritating. But what we're going to do is, here's my dashboard. I'm going to put my image in it. Oh, for heaven's sakes, computer. There we go. We want to fit that and center it. So the key here is when you make any type of image, you're going to want to make it exactly the same size as your dashboard screen. So my dashboard is 1200 by 800. What I love about Figma is you can actually, this is 1200 by 800 pixels wide, which matches Tableau. I find doing this in PowerPoint a lot more difficult because PowerPoint doesn't really give you that pixel perfect. I think he like measures in like inches and stuff, which is totally not helpful for a dashboard. So I use Figma for this. Illustrator would probably do the same thing. I'm gonna get rid of this. So now that you have that in here, you'll see it doesn't quite fit exactly. And depending on what you're using, this can be even more pronounced or obvious. So you're gonna wanna take your image and take out all the outer padding. Tableau puts all objects with a 4-point outer padding. And you'll think, well, shoot, that's the only thing I put in here. But the trick is there's by default this larger container, this tiled container, and it always has 8-point padding. So you want to get rid of that, and you have a crystal clear, perfect image for your background. All right. Tip 2 is the blank character navigation. Oh, you know what? I picked the wrong one. That's okay. It doesn't matter. Well, it does matter. Who knows where that one is? So the other one, well, it's fine. I'll do it here. I'll just get rid of this, do it from scratch. Okay. The other is blank character navigation buttons. So after you have your landing page, that's what I meant to put in there, whatever. Once you have your landing page, the reason I do this is because I find that it's much easier to create all of my potential navigation buttons in the full image in the background. And the reason for that is that I'm not dealing with some of that rendering issue that Tableau does with shapes or even images. At a larger scale like this, it's a lot crisper. And you're not like getting this like weird clicking thing where it highlights too. So what I do is, this is probably one of the few times I'll use a floating container, and I'll float this container over where I'm going to put my navigation buttons on my dashboard. And then I'll put in, and this will just do one as an example. So I'll put my blank right here. So let's just pretend we're doing this for overview. And technically I would put in a bunch for all of these, but here we have it. So I'll pick, all right, so once I create my button, my navigation, and I'm gonna have this go to my overview page. Instead of making this a blank transparent shape, which you can do, but then you have this shape in there, I actually use this emptycharacter.com. Literally, someone was super smart. They have a whole website for it. There is a blank character, just like an emoji. It's just a blank character. I pop that into my text, and the character takes up 5 characters, which just like any other like character that's not just your typical letters, they sometimes take up more actual characters. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. So anyway, we put that in here, and now what you have is there's nothing here, right? So this makes this very easy where I don't have to have an image. I don't have to create my blank shape. I have just a blank navigation button, and you'll see I can click it and it goes to the page that I had. So I love that. And I just make a bunch of blank character navigation buttons, and I relabel them over here. If you didn't know, this is just a bonus. You can actually rename them here and just say, overview button, which I think is very useful for clients. Okay. And bonus tip, if you didn't know that you could float objects off to the side of your dashboard, you can. But the trick is, this is just a bonus here, you can't just drag it here because it will disappear entirely. Tablau's like, nope, that's not even on the screen. But you can trick it by just dragging it off and dragging it off pretty easily to just hide things off to the side. Sometimes I do that with worksheets that I'm not ready to use that, but I don't want to have people seeing, or things like this, like notes. Like maybe you want to put notes on the side to talk to a client about. Cool. All right, so tip number 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Tip number 3 was going to do the custom formatting. So that's this like character where you kind of do your up or down. We use these a lot as kind of you saw in Will's with, you know, you can do year over year change and then have kind of that up or down. So it indicates what it is. You can write calculations that use characters to kind of like, if it's, you know, negative, then we're going to have a downward arrow. But if you really want to do something on the fly, we can just do this custom formatting with icons. So here we have our year of order date and we have our sales. And so what I want to be able to do is do this difference, right? I want the difference a year over year for 2020. And then I want to have that up or down arrow. And I don't have to write a calculation about it because I'm trying to be quick or something. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to format this number, the value, or you can go this way, I guess, our sum of sales. And where am I? Oh, format this. Okay, so in our pane, you'll see if I click on like, see any of these. Well, we're gonna cut. There we go. So if I click on custom, it'll automatically tell you kind of like how it's formatting a number. And so if you don't know this, what it does is it does your numbers in terms of your positive, your negative, and then if it's a 0, if you want something different. So what I can do here is format this. Oh, hold on a second. Wait a minute. I gotta put in my calculation first. Don't I? No. Sorry, I have to do my table calc first. Sorry. We want percent difference. Let's make this, yeah, that's fine. Okay, sorry. I thought it was funny. All right, so we got my percent difference. And then what I want to do is have it show my character. So I have my characters up here. I'm on a Mac, to be quite honest, not sure where you get them on a PC, but I have these right here. And so I can just quickly grab my characters and plop them into my custom. So I can say, you know, when it's negative, so negative, and then I might have to use that order, and then positive. Percent. Actually, I just want one decimal place. And then 0 would be regular. And so there you have it. It already is going to give me my down and my down and my up, and I didn't have to do anything else in terms of the calculation. I'm just formatting, hey, if it's negative, it's going to have that down arrow. And a bonus tip is that you can create a calculation. Let's see, where's my filter? One of the things similar to what you know, Will kind of showed was where you can like just hide when you did that true false and you hit all the falses. You could do that as well for here. So say I just want to show 2020 or my maximum year. I can do something. I could do a true false max year and then just hide all the ones that are not that year. But this trick that I learned from Kevin, who I think learned from somebody else, as it typically goes, is we can use this lookup, which kind of just spoofs every value. Well, every row has a value. But what I do, if I put this on here as just 2020, it actually maintains all the other table calculations that are in there. It's a pretty cool trick. And then I can actually hide that header, and now I have my difference. Now, since I just told you that, you can also do things like this where I can make something on fire. You can change, you can put icons in here however you want for your over year change. Okay. Tip number 4 is containers. So if you look back here, I have, what you'll see is lots of containers, in fact. But the reason I share this is because a lot of people I see will make, you know, background images in other tools and then bring them in for just the purpose of a container. And I want to say, you know, if it's just to make things look pretty, I don't think it's necessary. You can do some things with just, yes, non-rounded corners, boxy corners. But here's a way you can make drop shadows in Tableau. I know it's not quite the same, but you can do it. And that's my point. You can do anything you want in Tableau, right? All right. So in this case, the way I want to do this is I want to have 4 quadrants and I want to have some spacing between them using all these containers. So what I'm going to first do is drop in, I'll drop in my main container. In this main container, I am going to color my background gray. So this is going to be that bottom layer container. Now, I always like to add padding to my containers. In this example, I'm just adding 25 all the way around my outer, which brings in my margins. And I like to do that. Okay, and then what I want to do is I'm going to drag this, a blank in here, and I'm going to color that white and remove all the padding of it. And this is going to be kind of actually my center space. And then I'll put a horizontal above and a horizontal below. So you'll start to see like I have kind of the structure getting together. Within this one, let's see here, we're going to add a blank to this top here and a blank to the bottom. And these are both going to be white and no padding. I know this is like watching paint dry, but like hopefully you're like, whoa, you can do stuff with containers. How about that? And then I'll put my 2 other containers on both sides of this, which are going to be the actual containers I will put charts in, as you saw before. So I have all these containers now. So you see that wasn't too bad. I've made my 4 quadrants. And now now that these are containers, I can put all my charts in them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give these a border, and I'm actually going to make them white. And then the trick here is to just adjust the outer padding on only the right and the bottom, which gives that lowest layer container pops through. Right? Like that's pretty cool. Like you can still do things in Tableau. All right, so you see, you get the point that you can really do a lot with moving kind of these containers around and just playing with padding. This is also how sometimes I make lines between my charts, is I actually put them all in one container and then just adjust the padding instead of using like blanks, new objects for lines. Voila, there you have it. And then you can start putting all the other charts in here. Okay. Whew. No, that's not supposed to be there. Let's clear that off. All right, tip number 5. Let's go back to my example. Tip number 5 are these indicator bars. So I use these a lot for clients because often I want to direct them using pre-attentive processes and seeing color and to say, hey, look here first, like something's wrong, right? Like not just necessarily the number, because maybe, you know, numbers are actually, you have to read them, and color you can just, you know, interpret. So you'll see here, what I'm doing is saying, based on a selected, and kind of spoofing something so that this does this, what I want to do, but essentially saying if the selected month, if the selected month is lower than the annual monthly average, then, you know, I want it to be like, hey, look at this, right? And so you'll see they change based on if that month is lower than this. And so this is good, we're doing better than monthly average, we're not doing better than monthly average. Of course, those two both did the same thing, but that's okay. All right, so we're gonna build, there we go, there's one that's different. So I'm actually working with a client right now. We literally are doing this exact same thing. How about that? These are real tips, folks. All right, so in order to do this, we'll type -1 in our columns. And I'm sure many of you know, you can type directly into the columns or rows or on the marked card and create calculations on the fly. This gives us the bar that we're going to use. So we want to clean this up by actually making this bar fill the entire space. So we'll just fix this from 0 to 1 so that it fills the entire space. And we'll get rid of the header. And I've already cleaned up some of the axes lines so that we have this bar. Then what we're going to do is, let's say we're going to do this on profit. There's a couple of things that are helpful. So right now, profit is a measure in here. but it's not something that's a category that I can say, hey, look at profit. So like you see here, this says like corporate sales, corporate profit. So I want to show you two things, because one, if you didn't want to put, in this case, like corporate or the segment, you can double click in here and just type two open parentheses, hit enter. And this allows us now to put something actually on labels, even though there's nothing we're putting on labels. But now that we have that here, it's kind of strange, but now we can just get rid of it and write profit. And so I can make my profit now here, and I'll just add a couple spaces so it looks nice. And so then I can just have profit on bar if I wanted, and nothing else, just be like, hey, you've got an issue with profit. If in the case that I wanted something else on there, like segment, now I could put that on label. And, you know, I can do whatever like this. Now, here's the bonus tip. If you didn't know, again, I like sometimes doing things on the fly and not necessarily have to create calculations that, I don't know, are less useful. But if you double click on segment, you can type in upper, and I love just being like cleaning up my formatting of my fonts. And that's an easy way to do it if your, you know, field is formatted, obviously in title case. So now I have my nice bar. And now what, the only thing I need is some calculation that's saying my current, in this case, current month is greater or less than the average monthly profit. So I've already created a calculation for that, which it doesn't, you know, doesn't really matter. But anyway, I have some LEDs in here to get kind of this, but whatever you do above, below, the point is you put that on your color, and now as those values change, this will indicate, you know, either the red or the gray in the case that I've chosen. So that is that. Okay. Next up is what we kind of call floating bars, or floating bars with a dot strip. I don't know if there's a better name for it, but essentially, I use these a lot for either showing kind of percentiles. We do it a lot in healthcare, where they're looking at the 25th to the 75th percentile for some metric and where your facility may fall within that. And so you have just the range, but we're not showing all the other facilities that make up those percentiles. You just want to show kind of that range and yourself. In this case, what I'm doing is showing the minimum and the maximum. So we get a range of the min max, as well as every single value. Now I recognize this data is less interesting because it's like super spread out, but you get the point. So we're doing from the min to the max, and then also showing every single value within it and the median, which we also do sometimes with hospitals to show, hey, this is the lowest length of stay, this is the highest length of stay. Here's the range between the two, and here's where you are. So that's kind of a practical application, how we use it. All right, so what we need to do to make this happen is we're going to use a Gantt chart and a dual axis with the dots. On the Gantt chart part, what we need to have is our minimum value, or like I was saying, if you're going to do a percentile, and then the difference between the minimum and maximum, which gets us our range. So I've already created a minimum calculation here. No, it matters if I'm doing profit again. So I have minimum profit by month, which I've already created that calculation. And so, and then I have my difference. So I've also had to create a maximum. So you need a minimum calculation, a maximum calculation, and then, where might the difference be? Oh, here it is. And then my maximum minus the minimum. So that just gives us our, like I said, our difference. So if I put minimum out here, no, wait, hold on a second. Profit. Yeah. And my minimum. Okay. I got both of them here. I guess it doesn't matter. All right, so let's start this way. We're gonna make this my Gantt. All right, so here's my minimum monthly profit, and then I'm gonna take my into max and put that on size. And so you'll see that now it goes to the entire length of it. And as I mentioned, it's just that the base value is the minimum and this is the size is just that difference. So it's actually pretty clever how that works. Okay, so that's our range. And so then when I put profit up here as well, what I want to have for profit is I want the profit to be at a different level of detail. So I want my profit to be actually at every single month. So I'm going to put out my order date for month. And we're going to make that a circle. So now I have actually all of my months are now out here too. So the difference is here I have some LEDs just to get me that range for all values, and then I have my every single month. And so then we'll just dual axis this. And we're going to have to bring this, move these marks to the front, and we'll synchronize our axes. And you'll see, like, I know this is true because here's the maximum month, it's at the end, the minimum month is at the end, as working as it should. And then essentially you're just going to format this a little bit. So maybe make these a little smaller. Oops, not both of them. And then you'll just format it as, oh, that's why, get that off there. There we go. Jeez Louise. And format that as you would want. Let's make that. Yeah, something like that. Now, in my case, I also have a selected month, but you get the idea. So you can have two levels of detail on here and have that range available. Okay. Next up, because it's already set. All right, the next one I want to show is this sheet swap, and it's I guess it's a regular sheet swap, but the point is you can actually use this for multiple values. It's more of a secular calculation that changes, cycles through perhaps charts. So here we have currently showing a map, and let's say I want to show a hex map instead for whatever reason. This will just cycle through and I can click it again and it goes back to the geographic map, etc. We use this for a client as well. But you can also do it through multiple things. It's just a cycle. You click one button once and it'll go through each of them. So for that one, let's see where we're at. Okay. So in this case, I have a parameter called map type, which has two values, geographic and hex. And those are my two map types. Then you create a calculation that is just that parameter, which just means it's only true for one thing at a time, right? For one parameter value at a time, it will be true. Here is the main calculation that gets this to work is we're going to say for that map type, when it's geographic, then we want to bring in hex. When it's hex, we want to bring in geographic. And again, you could do this for three things, like when it's, then instead of hex map geographic, then line chart, when line chart, then back to geographic. And you would cycle through three different charts if you so choose. Okay, so first we'll just make the button, which is the easy part. So we're going to put map type on detailed because we'll need that to be in our label. And then we want next map type. We're going to make this a shape. Next map type is our shape. And so you'll see here, and I've already organized these, but my hex map is going to be the hex shape. My geographic map is geographic one. But what you'll see is the next map is what the shape is. The current value is actually the hex, right? That's the current value that's we're actually looking at. You'll see it says map type is hex map because that's what's going to be on the page. And then we create our two sheets. So it is two sheets. I have one with the hex. It's only true with the hex map. So I put that parameter on here and say, yep, when it's hex map, it's going to be there. And for the other one, it's the opposite, right? I put that same map. And if you show all values, it's checked for geographic. Okay, so in order to, I already put these in here, didn't I? So in order to set this up, you'll bring in, where's that one? This is why, and this is another reason for containers, is because containers allow you to collapse your worksheets. So here we're going to put our hex sales in the container that I already built. And we're going to put map sales in here too, but it doesn't have any value because it's not, you know, the map is not, it's not on the geographic map. And when you do this, you always have to remove the titles because they do not go away. And so you have to create a separate calculation for your title. And then we'll bring in our button. So there, chunk. Okay, so here's our button. All right, so in order to set this up, we're going to go to dashboard actions, and this is going to be a parameter action that runs on the button. So I'll pick my sheet swap button. The parameter is the map type, and the field is the next map type. And that's because we're saying, hey, when you change the parameter, I want you to render that calculation, and that calculation, if you remember, when it's geographic, it's going to render hex. So it ends up then pushing that parameter and changing the parameter value when the button is selected. And it's a cyclical calculation. Oh, of course I didn't save it, dummy. The joys of doing this at night. Okay. I'm a morning person, by the way, so in case it's not clear. Let's try that again. All right, so now you'll see I can click on my geographic pops up, click on tile, our hex map, and the other map shows up. Okay. Phew, how's that? All right, so in light of time, I'm probably gonna skip the customer table. You guys can check that out. This is essentially just a method of using kind of measure names and values and kind of min 0 and min 1.0, whatever, to allow you to get multiple things in one view. So you can scroll and have things that are not just bar charts, but other types of dynamic text together and, you know, charts such as this. But I really want to do this one because I think this one's pretty cool and pretty useful. So let's see here. Okay, where is, I broke this. All right, let me, hold on a second. Did I break it? I hope not. Probably did in the beginning. Here. Shoot. I think I broke my example. Hang on, let's see if I can bring this up again. So what I want to do is have two different dashboards go to one worksheet, but when you get to that second dashboard, you can only go back to the one you came from. And so this happened with the client because they had a detail page that you could get to from two different worksheets, but they didn't want you to like have to be confused by how to get back to where you came from, right? Like if you're at a higher level report and you go down to a customer detail, you expect to hit back and go back to where you came from, not have a choice of, hey, you can go to either of these two places. Because you might be like, I didn't even know I could go to either two places. Like that's weird. So like, did I like really mess this up? I thought I had it hooked up. Maybe I didn't. That's weird. Whatever. Okay, well, we're just gonna build it anyway. Okay, so I thought I had it where I could show you what it does, but really don't. What the hell I did here? All right, well, the way to do this is you want to be able to have I'll start over. I'm gonna have to not, because it's too hard to do and I like don't have it here. Oh my god, what a pain in the butt. Is it working? Okay, that did work. Right. No. Oh, I got it. Sorry. All right, here we go. Duh, geez. Okay, so I have it as an action filter. That's why. So, okay, here's the example of if I'm going to select a customer and I want to drill down to that customer's detail, right? So I get down to the customer detail. I want to be able to go back. Sorry, it's like too late on my end. I want to go back to where I came from. But let's say I'm on this overview page and I want to drill down to a states detail. Something broke. Well, I don't know what's going on. All right, forget this. Man, what a pain in the butt.
Lindsay, is the this workbook is up on your public profile, right?
It is, and it was working when I did this like 2 other times. I don't know what I.
No, it's all good. It's the
Oh,
beauty
yeah.
of live demos, right?
That's cool. Anyway, it's a pretty cool technique because essentially what I wanted to be able to show, I can still do it, but it's confusing if you can't see it in action, is what I said. But the bottom line is what you do is you create 2 worksheets, and essentially those worksheets have a number of parameters on them that are, it's kind of like a sheet swap, but not like they're only true when something has been passed from the dashboard that you're on. So you're passing something from the dashboard that then makes that worksheet true. And then that worksheet, which I do think one is here, but let's see if I can make this work again. Nah, it kind of broke. Then it's only true. And so then the worksheet shows up and then you just have a go-to sheet action and it'll only go back to the one sheet. I could probably pull it up on my public profile.
Conceptually, I guess it's like maybe 2 roads that lead to the same dead end. And instead of going down the other road, you want to go back to where you came from.
Exactly. Yep.
Yep.
And so the reason that this is helpful is that, like I said, your only other options are to have 2 buttons that say back to like dashboard 1 or back to dashboard 2, or actually have 2 detailed reports, which is super annoying to maintain. So yeah, that is the purpose for it. And my apologies. That's what.
No, it's all good. We did have a couple questions. If you wanted to take a couple seconds to answer those. The first one was actually about your earlier used min1 as in your column shelf, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Can you kind of talk through why you did that? What that helped you do?
Yeah, so for the indicator bar example, I used min1 to essentially create an axis that then I had some control over and I could plot a bar chart on it is really what happened there. I also, and so the other thing to know about that, so in the customer table example, which I didn't get to show, but you'll see here, I also use either, and the reason it's min1 I did is because, like I said, I just want a bar so long, you know, it could be min10 and it would still look the same in a dashboard in terms of how long it is. But I also use like, here's min0. And essentially in this example, I use that so that I can put different fields and information on here instead of a discrete text, because discrete text sometimes can break things, but also in this case, like I want 2 different values here and you can't have like a discrete value here that's 2 in the same column. I do use sometimes just know if you use this, if you just do min0 or min1, it does default to just an integer versus if you type in 1.0, it becomes a decimal. And the reason that's important is if you want to change your axes, you can only do that if you've made that that field a decimal. So you'll see here, or even here, like I can then edit this axis, and if I wanted to, for whatever reason, change it you can to like different points, which I have done for like, I think this one, yeah. So here I have min 1 and 0, but I fixed it to negative 0.2 and 2 because I wanted to give this object that I have in here some different spacing, so it wasn't so squished up. So that's kind of how I use those.
And there was a second question that kind of goes hand in hand with that. And if you're using min 1, min 0, is it possible to have different column widths?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
So you can't, which is definitely one of the limitations, is because they all end up getting the same spacing. So I find that it is helpful when you're doing this kind of, so I've done this exact same chart for a client, but the chart actually took up only a quarter of the view. So they were actually packing a ton of information into one view that then they could scroll through. And so you didn't notice the spacing as much because things like the text sections felt appropriately sized and, the bar chart was fine. So yeah, that is a consideration. If you have something like this and you only need like, I don't know, 3 out of the 5 of these, it's going to look a little stretched out. I wish it didn't do that, but.
Yeah, that's one that I've heard a ton as well, right? That seems to be a common request, is basically conditional formatting in Tableau, like Excel conditional formatting almost.
Exactly. Yeah, that would be nice.
All right, so we'll give it a sec. Any other questions for Lindsay? One last one just snuck in. Can you add image to annotations on the map?
Image.
Not sure what you mean by that. Can you add an image as an annotation maybe on a map?
I mean, yeah, you certainly can. I mean, you can. So I wouldn't recommend adding images as annotations because one, if it's an image, it's just text, it tends to look a little crummy. But there are ways to add annotations that you can like turn off and on through using either like show hide containers. So sometimes, I'll build a ton of annotations around something in one container with some, blanks and whatever, and tile it all really nice. And that way someone can just say, turn on annotations. And that's one way to, turn on things that are actually text boxes versus an image.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there are times where I've made, whether it be a PowerPoint slide just with, it's transparent slide that you put in a show hide container or something like that.
Yes. And, sometimes folks use that where like the overlays, where you overlay over a whole dashboard an image that has like, here's how you do all this. And here are the directions that you've pre-built somewhere else, obviously as an image. I think those are helpful. The only limitation that I've told clients is that, you have to maintain that image. So if you move stuff around your dashboard, your image is no longer functioning, versus if you try your best to build that in Tableau in a big show hide container, if you're really clever with how you space things out and putting in like blank objects to tile it just right, at least then you have the text, or any information directly in Tableau, which is a little more easy for maintenance, but
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. Awesome. Thank you so much, Lindsay. If there are any other questions while we're wrapping up here, please feel free to pop them in the Q&A. Lindsay's information is up on the screen. Strongly recommend you go take a look at her blog, her public profile, follow her on Twitter. Some amazing content out there. I think we lost Will. I think he's on his way home to his pregnant wife, so I'll give him a pass. But I just wanted to say thank you to both Will and Lindsay for joining us today. Both of their information is up on the screen. Before we kind of sign off for the day, I do kind of want to open it up to anyone out there looking for a job, hiring, or if there are any other general questions before we kind of sign off. Joey, did you have a couple opportunities you wanted to speak about?
Yeah, Tim, I have 3 opportunities that people reached out to me in the last week. American Airlines is looking for a data viz specialist. So if you're interested, I'll also post these on our LinkedIn page, the Real North Texas Tableau group. If you're interested, just ping me on LinkedIn. Also, Susan Fritz, who is with Cotivity, reached out to me today and said that their company is looking for a Tableau developer, completely remote, which sounds pretty attractive. And then my wife's company, which is called Brightsight, is looking for a Tableau developer / data analyst. That's based here in North Dallas. It's a full-time on-site. Healthcare experience is preferred. So I'll post these 3 on our LinkedIn page. And if you guys are interested, just send me a note.
Absolutely. All right, so if there are no other questions or nobody has any openings or looking, we'll just, let me move one more slide, sign off for the day. Again, thank you, Will. Thank you, Lindsay. For those of you that aren't already, you can follow us on LinkedIn or on Twitter to kind of find out about those opportunities that Joey just talked about, any of our upcoming meetings, or the recording for today's event. Can find that all there. And finally, we will be meeting next month, the 24th at 3 p.m. Central. We noticed those earlier times you have better luck with attendance. People seem to be able to make those a little bit easier. So with that, thank y'all, and everybody have a great night.